Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Today we're going to talk about a number of headlines, both directly and indirectly related to Bible prophecy. So let's dive right in. This first thing, before we get to the headlines that I want to talk about, is yesterday I was a guest on Hope for Our Times YouTube channel. Typically this is Pastor Tom Hughes' channel, but he was out of the country. So Pablo Frascini filled in for him, and I was a guest on that show. We talked about the times in which we live. So if you missed this show when it was live on YouTube, the recording is still available. If you just go to the channel, I'll put the link down in the description. I encourage you to go check that out. This is one you're not going to want to miss. So with that said, let's go on and talk about the news of the day. So this is from the Daily Wire. It says big tech worked closely with the FBI and DHS to police, quote, disinformation. Hundreds of internal documents expose top U.S. government agencies working closely with social media companies like Facebook and Twitter to censor American freedom of speech under the guise of fighting disinformation over several years as obtained and reported by The Intercept. The Intercept's investigative journalist Lee Fang broke the story Monday, confirming what Americans have feared in the current age of censorship, that only authoritarian regimes could dream of enacting in a nation founded on the unabridged right to freedom of speech. By Monday night, Fang appeared on Tucker Carlson Tonight to discuss the bombshell report. We looked at really hundreds of documents that paint a vivid picture of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Homeland Security closely collaborating with the top social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook, to censor various forms of content under the banner of fighting disinformation, Fang told Carlson. Now, in the past, people have used the argument, they've said, well, these are private companies, and private companies should be able to determine what's posted on their platforms and what's not. But keep in mind, these social media platforms are protected, they're shielded from lawsuits by something called Section 230, which basically says that as long as they aren't editing content, if they're a platform where anyone can post, then they're not held liable for what people are posting. Well, once they move in and start to edit misinformation, then that becomes editorial content. They should no longer be shielded from this. So don't buy this argument, and it especially does not apply when you're talking about the government directly collaborating to censor people. That's the government violating people's freedom of speech. So this goes on. It says, Fang said the story shows a very cozy relationship between the government alphabet agencies like the FBI and DHS and tech giants, where they held monthly meetings as recently as August and exchanged emails and text to shape online discourse. That's the key. They're trying to shape what people are thinking. This goes on. It says, according to the report, Fang emphasizes key takeaways showing that DHS plans to target inaccurate information on topics such as the origins of, and here's the thing, talking about big tech censorship, I'm on a big tech platform right now, at least one of them. I'm on several of them. But several in particular, and some of the most popular, if I even say these things, it's going to flag the video and I could potentially get warnings or strikes, all this other stuff. It's not even worth saying it. You can read it. You know what we're talking about, the late unpleasantness of the last 2 years. On topics such as racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. Now, what do all those things have in common? Well, the government, the current administration has certain policies that they put in place, a narrative regarding each of those subjects. So we're talking about the very heart of the reason we have a First Amendment and the reason we have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, is so that this information can get out and not be suppressed by the government. But here we have this partnership between big tech and government doing exactly that. It says the report also said that before the 2020 election, tech companies including Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Discord, Wikipedia, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and Verizon Media met monthly with the FBI, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and other government representatives. Fang said on his social media that Facebook and Twitter created special portals for the government to rapidly request takedowns of content. So this was not a one-off event. This was a regular partnership to stifle freedom of speech. It's collusion between the government and these big tech platforms to violate people's freedoms and liberties. It should be taken very seriously. It says a spokesperson from Twitter denied the allegations in a statement to The Intercept, saying the platform does not coordinate with other entities when making content moderation decisions, adding officials independently evaluate content in line with the Twitter rules. Well, we know that that's not true. We know without a doubt that it's not true, because back in 2021, in July of that year, Alex Berenson, who was a former reporter for the New York Times, had a Twitter account. He posted a number of things to that Twitter account that didn't meet the official narrative, and he got banned from Twitter as a result. Well, he filed a lawsuit against Twitter, and as part of the discovery process, he received internal emails from Twitter, internal messages that showed that the Biden administration had direct contact with Twitter executives specifically about Alex Berenson and what a problem he was, and that they didn't want him saying what he was saying, and that unequivocally they wanted him off that platform. And lo and behold, he was banned from that platform. Now he was able to move to Substack, but unless you knew to find him there, you didn't get that information. And let's keep in mind, all of this information, it's not in dispute anymore. They tried to claim it wasn't in dispute back then, except for by them, because it didn't fit the narrative. But now, all that turned out to be true, because we can't say that it wasn't at this point. It's obvious to everybody that what he said was true back then, but that was kept from people on a major platform, a public space, a forum reaching a lot of people, millions of people, just taken off. So I would think that in this case, you're looking at freedom of the press as well as freedom of the speech. So you're looking at serious abuse of government power, in my opinion. So it goes on, it says, Fang told Carlson that what started as a mission to combat foreign threats in the aftermath of 9/11 has moved toward fighting disinformation using the justification that it radicalizes the homeland and could lead to public health disruptions or political violence. Well, anything could lead to something. We don't have laws that stop people from doing things that could lead to. No, if it's illegal offline, sure, it should be illegal online. But if it's not, what is the problem? Why are we allowing this control to take place under the guise that somehow we're to be protected from information? The Intercept report also includes an anonymous interview with an FBI official who said the department reassigned him from his usual job of countering foreign intelligence services to monitoring American social media accounts in the summer of 2020. Again, this is essentially spying on American citizens. I don't understand how this is not a major abuse of power. So they have a justification. We had these documents, and they're pushing forward with this broad censorship agenda, Fang said. Earlier this year, Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, the GOP senatorial candidate, filed a landmark lawsuit in May to expose how top Biden administration officials allegedly colluded with social media companies to censor freedom of speech. Well, again, there may be some allegedlys in other instances, but again, we know they've done this. We have the evidence before us. It's out there. So it's not an allegedly. Jonathan Turley, a professor of law at George Washington University who has written about the lawsuit, said, according to The Intercept, there is growing evidence that the legislative and executive branch officials are using social media companies to engage in censorship by surrogate. It is axiomatic that the government cannot do indirectly what it is prohibited from doing directly, If government officials are directing, facilitating such censorship, it raises serious First Amendment questions. The Biden administration announced earlier this year that its Department of Homeland Security would create a disinformation governance board, which many conservative politicians said would crack down on freedom of speech in an unconstitutional and Orwellian move. After facing massive opposition, federal authorities shut down the Disinformation Governance Board in August, more than 3 months after announcing a pause on the board's work. However, according to The Intercept, the federal government has yet to cease its efforts to censor the American people. Guys, this is just a precursor. What we've seen over the last couple of years is collusion between big government and big tech to censor, control narratives. Really, it's a propaganda machine is what it is. But this ability to do this, all of this is just a precursor of what is to come in the last days when the Antichrist comes to power. He will control all the people of the world, every people, nation, language, tribe, and the Mark of the Beast platform will be rolled out, which will allow him to cut off from buying and selling, be able to control who is able to buy and sell. And no doubt it will be based on your level of obedience to the government. So if you are obedient and you follow the predetermined narrative, then you'll be allowed to participate in society. We're seeing the beginnings of this here with this big tech censorship, and we have for some time now where these things that are really public forums. I mean, think about it. If a public utility, we don't allow. Well, a long time ago, we said these may be private companies, but they're here to serve the public, and so we're not going to allow these utilities to say, well, we don't like your political views or something that you said didn't align with it wasn't politically correct, so we're going to shut off your water or we're going to shut off your electricity. We would think that was absolutely absurd, but the same thing is taking place here with Twitter and Facebook. These are essentially, even though they're private companies, they're public forums, and when we see the government actively collaborating with them to take down people's content because they don't like what they're saying, they don't like the message, that's a direct violation of their individual freedoms, liberties, and their right to free speech. So this is all just a sign of what is coming in the end times, this level of power, this merger of corporate power and government power. We've seen that before. The last time a world war was fought, it was over that concept of a merger between government and corporate power, pushing out propaganda to people. We don't need to go through that again, but unfortunately, the Bible says this is exactly where we're headed, and we see it with this type of stuff. Now, speaking about that, and again, I'll probably end up getting censored for this video. I'll probably get a strike or a ban or something like that, because how dare I question what they're doing. The corporate overlords know what you should be allowed to hear, and you shouldn't be allowed to hear these things that I'm saying. Such as this. This is a piece from The Atlantic. This is from a professor at Brown University, Emily Oster. I'm sure you've seen this making its rounds all over the internet because it's got a lot of people fired up, and I think rightfully so. It says, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I had made myself. We had a family hand signal, which the person in the front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our mask. Once, when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, "Social distancing." These precautions were totally misguided. In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth mask, made out of old bandanas, wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know. Now, again, when she says we didn't know, she means she didn't know. But she wants it to sound like nobody knew, right? A lot of people knew, a lot of people said so, and big tech censored them and called them conspiracy theorists and said this is misinformation, we're taking it down. And so they made it seem like, well, everybody who's right thinks this way. She says, I've been reflecting on this lack of knowledge thanks to a class I'm co-teaching at Brown University on that which shall not be named. We spent several lectures reliving the first year of the pandemic, discussing the many important choices we had to make under conditions of tremendous uncertainty. Some of these choices turned out to be better than others. To take an example close to my own work, there is an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the U.S. were closed for too long. The health risk of in-school spread were relatively low, whereas the cost to students' well-being and educational progress were high. The latest figures on learning loss are alarming, but in spring and summer of 2020, we only had glimmers of information. Reasonable people who cared about children and teachers, advocated on both sides of the reopening debate. Well, again, we had a lot more than glimmers of information at that time, especially in relation to mortality of children. So, it's very disingenuous to act like there was just no information. Nobody knew what the right thing to do was. Well, there were people who were right, and she was on the wrong side, and so she wants to revise history and talk about something different. She goes on to talk about all these different things, these policies that were enacted over the last 2.5 years. And get to the bottom line. She says, the standard saying is that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, but dwelling on the mistakes of history can lead to a repetitive doom loop as well. Let's acknowledge that we made complicated choices in the face of deep uncertainty, and then try to work together to build back and move forward. And I love this. Again, the term we made complicated choices. Who is the we here? Some people made choices that were one way, and some people made choices that were another way. So, for instance, walking along the bridge, hiking, wearing cloth masks, if that's what she thought was best for her family, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I wanted to do what's best for my family. I advocate for other people doing the best for what they think is best for their family. Everybody's individual circumstances are different. People have access to different levels of information. We should have freedom and liberty for people to decide for themselves. But here's some of the complicated choices that she's talking about we making. So this is Professor Emily Oster back in December, so not even a year ago. She says on Twitter, shaming people who haven't gotten, again, I don't want to be censored by big tech. As soon as I say that word, it'll trigger some algorithm. Who haven't gotten that is not likely to work at this point or ever. What will? Individual family pressure, maybe. Requirements for things you want to do, like domestic air, train travel, work, so, having a job, being able to afford your life. Sports events, yes, we can have those without shame. So here, she's taking a position, she's making this complicated choice of saying, I'm going to coerce and force and demand that other people comply to the behavior that I want them to take. And now she wants amnesty. Hey, don't get upset. Forget all that stuff that I was talking about less than a year ago. Now that it's clear to the whole world that what they were pushing was completely wrong. And so, as a Christian, we should forgive others. Jesus forgave me for my sins, so I will forgive anyone for anything they have done to me in the past or will do to me in the future. However, forgiving someone is different than simply saying, now that I've forgiven you, I'm going to lay down and be a doormat and let you walk all over me as if it never happened. No, that's completely different. And so people who advocated these types of policies, like Professor Oster did, especially people in positions of authority and power who can enact these types of policies, they should be held accountable at the ballot box. And I think that the very reason we're seeing this story pop up now is because in the United States there is an election this coming Tuesday, and there are many politicians who are up for re-election. who advocated these very same policies that she advocated. And now they're starting to notice this polling data is telling us that people didn't like these policies. And so let's forget all about it, guys. Let's forget all about it. Because I can assure you, the states of Michigan and the states of New York right now, there are two very competitive gubernatorial races that the mainstream media didn't think would be competitive at all. These are blue states that aren't supposed to be competitive at all. Now they are. Why is that? Well, it could be because the governors running for re-election in those states pushed policies just like the ones that Professor Emily Oster pushed. And people who in the past probably would have voted for these politicians have said, no thanks, after what you did to me last year, I don't think I want to vote for that. Maybe I don't vote for your opponent because I don't like them either, but I'm just not going to vote at all. Or a lot of them are probably saying, you know what? I never thought I would vote for your opponent, but I'm doing it this year because you took away my freedoms and my rights. And so, again, we should forgive as Christians. And I forgive anybody that pushed these policies. But we have to remember, it's not the same to say I'm going to be a doormat and I'm just going to let these things happen. We need to stand up against these things and stand for righteousness. And so when these policies were being pushed in the past, last year, a few months ago, we talked about how, while this is not the mark of the beast, it sets the stage for, it lays the foundation for the mark of the beast system to be in place, because these types of policies that were pushed the last couple of years, they're indistinguishable from the mark of the beast system. They're saying, if you don't comply, if you don't obey what we're telling you, if you don't follow this behavior pattern, then we're going to cut you off from these events, these aspects of society that freedom-loving people should be able to enjoy. And we've seen it not just with all of this, but we've seen it with things like protesting. Oh, we're going to shut down your bank account. Or you purvey misinformation, your PayPal account you're going to be fined $2,500. Or, oh, you want to take out a loan for a gas-guzzling vehicle instead of a brand new electric vehicle? Well, we're not going to do that. Or we're going to shut down your bank account. Or on and on and on. We're not going to let you participate in these things. You can't use our servers for your website. This is the road to totalitarianism. And while I encourage you to stand up to it, the Bible tells us that ultimately this totalitarianism is going to win out for a short time when the Antichrist comes to power, and he'll use this type of technology to control everybody, every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. Thankfully, we'll be long gone by then. If you're a believer in Christ, then you will not be here for that. If you're not, I encourage you to become one and avoid that time. But that's where the Bible says we're headed for a time. But the good news, even though this all sounds like bad news, the good news is it will be for a short time, because the Antichrist kingdom will be destroyed. It will be obliterated by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. So, don't let any of this stuff discourage you. Let it be an encouragement. Let it fill you with hope as we go through these difficult times. And one last thing, again, encourage you to go check out Hope for Our Times and this interview with Pablo Frascini. So I will put the link down in the description. Encourage you to go watch it. It's definitely worth watching. Guys, leave your comments below. Make sure to like and share this. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.